The House of Cards. A story of a hidden addiction, a life that collapsed, and the name she called for the first time. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. It started with bingo. That's what she would tell people later, when she finally got to the place where she could tell people. It started with bingo on a Tuesday night at the community center in Henderson, Nevada, where her neighbor Sandra had been going for years and had been inviting her for almost as long, and where Janet Payne had finally said yes on a rainy Tuesday in February because she had nothing else to do, and because the $3 entry fee included coffee and a slice of lemon cake. She won $12 that first night. She told her husband Dennis about it when she got home. He laughed, she laughed, they went to bed, and the next morning everything was exactly the same as it had been. Except something had shifted. Something small and specific and significant had shifted inside Janet Payne, a 48-year-old office manager from Henderson, Nevada, with a mortgage she was barely managing and a wardrobe she had been meaning to update for 3 years, and a life that was fine, genuinely fine, but that had a specific quality of not quite enough that she had never been able to name. The $12 had felt like more than $12. That was the beginning. And 6 years later, on a Thursday afternoon in April, Janet Payne was sitting in her car in the parking garage of a casino in Las Vegas with her phone in her hand and a bank notification on the screen that said what she had known it was going to say before she looked. Everything was gone. Not some of it, not most of it. Everything. Before we move forward with the story, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help us to grow this channel to uplift more people. To understand what the $12 meant to Janet Payne, you have to understand what $12 had once meant to a little girl growing up in Bakersfield, California. She was the younger of 2 daughters raised by a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who was present inconsistently and provided inconsistently, and who had, by the time Janet was 10, become the kind of presence whose absence was more reliable than his arrival. They were not destitute. They were the specific kind of not having that doesn't make the news and doesn't qualify for enough assistance, and just means that the coat you wear in January is the coat from 2 winters ago, and the school supplies at the beginning of the year are the ones on sale the week after school starts. And you learn early to manage your wanting, because wanting without the means to satisfy it is its own particular discomfort. Janet had learned that lesson thoroughly. She had also learned a different lesson. The specific, sustaining dream of a girl who grew up not quite having. That somewhere ahead of her was a version of life where the coat was new in October and the school supplies were bought without calculation, and the specific, low-grade anxiety of not enough was simply not present. She had chased that version of life with consistent, disciplined effort. Community college, then a degree she finished at night while working days, an office management career that had brought her to Henderson at 32 with Dennis, who was a good man and a steady one, and their 2 children, a son named Carter, now 23, and a daughter named Bree, 20. They had a house, they had 2 cars, they had the life that Janet had aimed at from Bakersfield. It was enough. It just never quite felt like it. There was always something slightly out of reach. The kitchen renovation, the vacation that kept being next year, the retirement account that was thinner than the calculator said it should be. The distance between where she was and where she had always been heading felt at 48 like it was widening rather than closing. Nobody had ever told Janet about a God-shaped hole. She had not been raised with religion. Her mother had had no time for it, and her father had had no use for it. And Janet had grown up in a household where Sunday mornings were for laundry, and the idea of a church was something that happened to other people. She had nothing against faith. She simply had no frame for it, no vocabulary for the specific shape of the emptiness that lived underneath her life. She just knew the emptiness was there. And on a Tuesday night in February, $12 in a community center had filled it. For about 45 minutes. The bingo nights continued. Tuesday evenings, reliably, with Sandra, who had no idea what she had introduced. The winnings were small and the losses were small, and the thing Janet was really going for was not the money. She understood this later, much later, in a counselor's office. It was the state, the specific, suspended state of possibility that existed between the moment the numbers started and the moment the card was complete or not complete, the seconds when anything could still happen. She had lived for 20 years in the state of anything can still happen, without access to a reliable way of feeling it. The slots arrived 6 months after the bingo. A group birthday celebration at a casino in Las Vegas. Nothing excessive. A Saturday afternoon, $20 each, a fun outing. Janet sat at a machine and fed her $20 in and felt the state arrive immediately and with more force than the bingo had ever produced. The lights, the sound, the rhythm of the pull and the spin and the pause before the result. It was, she would describe later, like the bingo feeling at full volume. She won $63 that afternoon. She went back the following Saturday alone. She told Dennis she was going to visit Sandra. She had not told her first lie to Dennis in 21 years of marriage. She told it easily. That was the detail that frightened her most, looking back. Not that she lied, but that the lie came out of her mouth with the smoothness of something that had been waiting to be used. Over the following 2 years, Janet built an architecture of concealment that she was not consciously aware she was building. The Saturday trips became twice monthly, then weekly. The amounts started at $20 and increased in the specific, gradual way that all escalations increase, each step small enough to feel like a continuation rather than a change, the new level normalizing quickly and becoming the floor from which the next level launched. She opened a separate bank account. She told Dennis it was for a savings goal she was working toward, a surprise for their anniversary. He accepted this with the trusting ease of a man who had no reason not to trust his wife of 21 years. She discovered online gambling at the 2-year mark, a development that removed the Saturday logistics and the gas money and the time cost and gave her access to the bet state at any hour, from any room in the house, on her phone or her laptop, with a credit card she had applied for without telling Dennis. The online access changed things. Not because it was more accessible, though it was, but because the removal of the physical environment removed some of the remaining friction. The casino had parking and lines and the specific slight awkwardness of a woman alone at a slot machine at 10 in the morning. The phone had none of that. The phone was just the state, on demand, at 3 in the afternoon when Dennis was at work and the house was quiet and the feeling of not quite enough was at its loudest. She was losing more than she was winning. She had always been losing more than she was winning. The math of gambling ensures this. She understood the math. She is a smart woman. This is important to say. She understood the math, and she went anyway, because the math was not the point. The state was the point, and the state was the only thing that reliably filled the space. The last day was a Thursday in April. Janet had told Dennis she had a half day at work and was going to run errands. She drove to Las Vegas. She went to the casino she had been going to for 3 years, a specific place where she had a player's card and where several of the floor staff knew her name, which she had always experienced as warmth and which she understood later as something more calculated. She sat down with the intent of playing for 2 hours. She was there for 7. The 2 hours became 3 when she was down and chasing the recovery, the specific irrational arithmetic of someone who cannot leave at a loss, because leaving at a loss is admitting the loss is real. The 3 became 5 when a small recovery gave her hope that the larger recovery was coming. The 5 became 7 when the hope was gone and she was operating on the specific mechanical numbness of someone who has lost the ability to stop and has not yet arrived at the crisis that will force the stop. At 4:15 in the afternoon, she made a transaction on her phone that she knew as she was making it she should not make. It was the home equity line. They had refinanced 2 years ago. A decision made for legitimate reasons that had left available credit on the line, and she'd been telling herself for a year that she was not going to touch it, and she touched it. She lost it in 45 minutes. She sat at the machine for a moment after the last spin. Then she picked up her phone. The bank notification told her what she already knew. She sat in the parking garage of the casino and looked at the number on the screen and felt something she had not felt in 6 years of managing the architecture of concealment. She felt the architecture fall. All of it, at once. The separate account, the credit card, the home equity line, the lies to Dennis, the Saturdays she had called errands, the 3 in the morning phone sessions that she had conducted in the bathroom with the door closed. The total was not a small number. It was the kind of number that changes the shape of a life. She sat in the car for a long time. Then she said something she had never said before, not in 48 years of a life conducted without religious framework, without the vocabulary of prayer, without any relationship whatsoever with the God she had no idea was the shape of what she had been filling with slot machines and poker apps and the 45 suspended seconds of a spin. She said out loud to the concrete ceiling of the parking garage, in the voice of a woman who has run completely out of every other option, Jesus, I don't know if you're real. I don't know how to do this, but I have nothing left, and I need help, and I don't know who else to call. The parking garage was quiet. She was not immediately transformed. But something happened in that car that she would spend a long time trying to describe accurately. A shift. Not dramatic, not supernatural in any visible sense, but real. The specific quality of alone changed. The concrete ceiling of the parking garage was the same ceiling. The number on her phone was the same number. And something in the room was different. She drove home. She told him that night. She had planned on the drive home to have a plan, to find a way to frame it, to manage the disclosure the way she had managed everything for 6 years. By the time she pulled into the driveway, she understood that there was no frame available. The architecture was gone. There was only the truth and the people who deserved to hear it. Dennis was in the kitchen making dinner when she came in. Dennis, I need to sit down with you. He turned around. He looked at her face. He turned the stove off. She told him. She started at the bingo, the Tuesday in February, the $12, the lemon cake, because she had learned watching other people confess things that you cannot explain where you ended up without explaining where you started. She told him about the slots, the Saturdays, the online account, the credit card, the home equity line, the Thursday afternoon. She told him the number. Dennis sat very still for a long time. He was not a man who shouted. His stillness was not calm. It was the specific, controlled stillness of a man receiving something so large that the normal mechanisms of response have temporarily suspended. He sat with his hands flat on the kitchen table and looked at the table.
How long?
6 years.
He said 6 years.
She said yes. He got up.
He went to the bedroom.
He closed the door.
She sat at the kitchen table alone.
She called Carter and Bree the following morning. She did not ask Dennis to be present for the calls because Dennis was in a place she could not reach yet, and she understood that his process was his, and she could not manage it. She called Carter first. He was 23, old enough to understand the financial specifics, and young enough that the ground his parents stood on still felt like the ground he stood on too. The call was difficult in the specific way of a child discovering that a parent is comprehensively human, not in the warm, relatable way, but in the costly, consequence-producing way.
He said, "Mom, the house? We still have the house, but the equity is gone and we need to restructure."
He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you okay?"
"No, not yet."
He said, "Okay, I'll come this weekend." Bree was harder. Bree was 20 and had her mother's emotional precision and her father's specific, quiet devastation. She listened to the whole account without interrupting, and at the end, she said, "Why didn't you tell us?"
"Because I couldn't."
"Because you were ashamed."
"Yes."
"I love you, Mom, but I'm really angry right now." "I know. You're allowed to be." Sandra came over on Saturday morning. Not because Janet had called her. Janet had not called anyone. Sandra came because she had the specific social attentiveness of a woman who notices when her neighbor's car has been in the driveway since Thursday and the curtains have not moved. She knocked. Janet opened the door. Sandra looked at her face and said, "What happened?" Janet told her, not all of it at once, in the abbreviated, worn-down version of someone who has told the story several times in 48 hours and is running low on the energy to narrate. Sandra listened. When Janet finished, Sandra said, "I need to take you somewhere. Not right now, when you're ready, but I need you to come with me."
"Where?"
"Sandra, there's a pastor there I want you to talk to." "Sandra, I'm not a religious person." "I know, come anyway." She went the following Saturday. Harvest Point Seventh-day Adventist Church in Henderson was smaller than Janet had expected and warmer than she had been prepared for. Pastor Dean Collier was 52 years old, a lean, direct man with reading glasses and the specific quality of someone who had been in ministry long enough to have stopped being surprised by the range of what people carried through his door. He met with Janet in his office on a Tuesday afternoon. She told him everything: the Bakersfield childhood, the not quite having, the $12 at bingo, the architecture of 6 years, the parking garage, and the prayer she had said to a concrete ceiling without knowing how to pray. He listened without filling the silences. When she finished, he said, "I want to ask you something. When you were sitting in the casino, in the moment before the spin when anything was still possible, what were you feeling?" She thought about it. Like something was about to change. Like this was the moment. He said, "Like hope." She looked at him. He said, "You were looking for hope. You were looking for the moment when the thing you had always wanted was about to arrive. And the machine was very good at making you feel like the moment was always just one spin away." He paused. What you were looking for was real. The need was real. The source was the wrong one. He opened his Bible. He read Matthew 11:28. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest."
He said this to people who were tired, not specifically tired from one thing, tired from the accumulation, from wanting and not having, from working and not arriving, from the specific grinding exhaustion of a life where the thing you need most is always one more thing away. He looked at her. He's not offering to fix your finances or restore your marriage or resolve your family. He is offering rest, the thing underneath all the wanting, the thing you've been spinning the wheel trying to find for 6 years. Janet sat in the chair across from Pastor Collier and felt something she recognized from the parking garage, the same quality of the room changing, of alone becoming different.
I don't know how to believe in something I've never been taught.
He said you already called his name in a parking garage. That's how it starts. The road back was not short, and it was not clean, and it was not a straight line. She entered a gambling recovery program, a structured clinical program that Dennis had found and presented to her with the specific wounded practicality of a man who has decided to stay and is trying to figure out what staying requires. She attended twice a week for 8 months. She attended Harvest Point on Saturdays, at first alone. Dennis was not ready and she did not push him. She sat in the service and listened to Pastor Collier preach, and felt, week by week, the specific and non-dramatic work of something settling inside her. Not ecstasy, not certainty, a settling. The financial restructuring was painful and specific and required conversations with banks and advisors, and eventually Carter, who worked in finance and who had, by month 2, moved past the anger and into the practical. Carter sat at the kitchen table with a spreadsheet and his parents on either side, and mapped a path that was going to require years and discipline, and the kind of patient, consistent effort that Janet had once applied to chasing the state.
She applied it to recovery instead.
Dennis came to church with her on the 7th Sabbath. He didn't say why. He sat beside her and was quiet during the service, and afterward, in the car, he said, "I can see why you come here."
Yeah?
It's honest. Nobody's pretending everything is fine.
No, they're not.
He came back the following Saturday. 14 months after the Thursday in April, Janet Payne stood at the front of a small room at Harvest Point Seventh-day Adventist Church on a Sabbath afternoon. The room held 22 people, a new support group that Pastor Collier had asked her to help him start, specifically for people dealing with compulsive behaviors that the church community had not previously had a formal space to address. 22 people who had come because a flyer on a community board had said in plain language that the group was for anyone whose coping mechanism had cost them more than they had intended to spend.
She looked at the room.
She recognized the specific quality of the faces, the careful composure of people who are in a place they weren't sure they would come to and are not yet certain they belong. "My name is Janet. I'm a recovering compulsive gambler. I lost everything that mattered to me financially in 6 years, and I almost lost everything that mattered to me personally. And I want to start by telling you something that took me a long time to understand."
She paused.
Whatever it is that you've been using to fill the space, the games, the drinks, the shopping, the screen, the relationship, whatever it is, the need underneath it is real. You are not broken in some unique and unreachable way. You were looking for something real, hope, relief, the feeling that something was about to change, and the thing you found gave you a version of it that cost more than it gave, because that's how those things work.
She looked at the room.
I found the real version in a parking garage on a Thursday afternoon when I had nothing left, and I said the name of someone I didn't know was listening. He was listening. She paused. He's been listening the whole time, for all of us. Whatever we've been using to avoid him, he's been there on the other side of it, waiting. The room was quiet. A woman in the third row, 40s, well-dressed, with the careful composure Janet recognized, put her hand over her mouth. You don't have to have it together to start. You don't have to have language for it. You just have to say the name. After the group, the woman from the third row found Janet in the hallway. What was the name you said? In the parking garage?
Jesus!
The woman looked at her for a moment. I've never said that name. Not like that. I know, I hadn't either. She looked at her. It's okay. You can say it for the first time anywhere, even a hallway.
The woman was quiet.
Then she said it.
Quietly.
Just once. Just his name. And Janet, who had been in a parking garage 14 months ago with nothing left and a concrete ceiling and no idea what she was doing, recognized the moment completely. She had been on that side of it. Now she was on this side. And the distance between the two was exactly one name. Matthew 11:28 was not written for people who have everything together. It was written for people who are weary, burdened, carrying something that is heavier than their own resources can manage. Jesus does not specify what the burden is: financial, relational, compulsive, spiritual. He says, all you who are weary and burdened. The invitation is that broad, the door is that wide. Janet Payne's story carries several truths worth naming plainly. The first is about the God-shaped hole, the specific emptiness that Augustine described 1,600 years ago when he wrote that our hearts are restless until they rest in God. Janet did not know she had it. She had not been given the vocabulary for it. But the restlessness was there, underneath the Bakersfield childhood and the not quite having and the 48 years of working toward a version of life that always stayed slightly ahead of her. And the machine found it before God did, or rather before she found God. It offered a counterfeit version of hope, the suspended moment, the anything can still happen, the spin before the result. The real hope, the one that does not charge you for the moment and does not take more than it gives, was available the whole time. She found it when she had nothing left to put in the machine. The second truth is about the cost of shame. Janet hid for 6 years because the shame of what she was doing felt more survivable than the exposure of it. It was not. Shame maintained in secret grows. It does not shrink in the dark. The confession, to Dennis, to her children, to Pastor Collier, eventually to 22 people in a church meeting room, was not the end of her. It was the beginning of the actual survival. And the third, the one that matters most for anyone sitting with a compulsive pattern that they have not yet told anyone about, the name she said in the parking garage required no credential, no religious background, no prior relationship, no correct phrasing. It required only the saying. If you are where Janet was on that Thursday afternoon, if you have run out of the architecture and the room is quiet and you have nothing left, say the name. He is already listening. He has been listening the whole time. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. If you or someone you love is struggling with compulsive gambling, free and confidential support is available. National Problem Gambling Helpline. Call or text 1-800-500-224-7000 or ncpgambling.org. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Gamblers Anonymous. Gamblers.org. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified about more inspirational stories on redemption and hope.